Shareholders of Jamaican Teas are to consider a spin-off of the company's manufacturing business into its own company. The decision is set for an extraordinary general meeting on October 27. The new company would potentially do an IPO and list on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. Since the announcement, JamTeas stock price has gained nearly 20%. We'll discuss with Chairman of Jamaican Teas and QWI Investments, John Jackson, and we'll also ask him about another company he chairs, QWI Investments. They're finally turning things around with a net profit increase of $334 million for the 9 months ending June 2021, compared to a net loss of $461 million for the same period a year earlier. And the analysts weigh in on the latest market developments. Express Catering is reporting its biggest quarterly increase since the start of the year. And in the U.S., the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 500 points as Wall Street wrapped up its worst month of the year. We'll discuss. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Stock Live. I'm Kalilah Reynolds. Great to see everybody in the house, everybody tuning in, all our early people. Where are you guys from? Where are you tuning in from this week? You notice I'm decked out in my pink today, of course, in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We're trying to drive awareness to the issue of breast cancer, urging women to get tested, get your mammography if you're the age of 40 and above, or even nearing 40, like, oh my gosh, it just hit me. I am almost there. So yeah, I got to jump on that. It really does serve as a good reminder having this month for us all to go get checked out. And men, this also affects you. So if something seems strange, seems out of the ordinary, get yourself tested. You can do your regular breast self-exam. Let your woman do it for you if you need to. And then, of course, go to the doctor and get it checked out. Chris Hill is joining us in Panama City. Hi, Chris. Vladimir Carr is in Trelawney. Philip is tuning in from Turks and Caicos. Leighton is in St. Anne. John Doe says, I'm dreaming Caribbean dreams to the moon. Wow. So you see, a lot of people are tuning in for this topic. 64 of you already live. So the numbers are picking up very early. I know you all are not here to see me tonight. You're here to see the star of the show, tonight's guest, John Jackson, a very humble man. I was telling him, he has a lot of fans out there waiting to see him. But he's like, oh, no, not me. Trust me, John Jackson was my very first guest on Taking Stock, the pilot episode, the one that set all the wheels turning, that made the show a reality back when QWI was doing its IPO. And now we're going to be talking to him about QWI as well as Jamaican Teas and this possible spinoff coming up. So, of course, this is all about you. This is your show because this is a live show. So if you have any questions for him, just type them in the live chat as well. So we're going to get to that soon. But first, here's what's hot in business.
Here's what's hot, brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers, your best interest at heart. First Angels Jamaica has launched a new business incubator and a training program, Rev Up Caribbean, targeting startups and established SMEs across the region. The platform will provide small and medium enterprises SMEs with smart capital. It will target entrepreneurs, founders of startups, and high-growth potential businesses to prepare them for funding success through world-class training, advising, and mentor matchmaking with local and global industry leaders. The aim is to foster collaboration among founders to help them create profitable, sustainable companies and for founders to become successful entrepreneurs. Managing Director Sandra Glasgow says RevUp is aiming to have 50% of the businesses in the incubator program to be women-owned or led. First Angels JA has, over the last 7 years, invested over $2 million as equity in 12 early-stage companies. First Global Bank has made it easier for small businesses to open bank accounts. They've launched Easy Start bank accounts. As little as $1,000 can be used to open an account. All you need is a government-issued ID, tax registration number TRN, and business registration, licenses, or trade name certificates. The Bank of Jamaica had given the go-ahead for FGB to ease the business bank account requirements for low to medium risk customers. Additionally, through FGB's early stage financing, startups operational for 2 years or less can get up to $15 million in financing. However, you'll have to provide in-house financials or business plans and cash flow projections. The Bank of Jamaica BOJ has raised its policy rate by 1 percentage point from 0.5% to 1.5%. The central bank says its decision is aimed at ensuring that the annual increase in the prices of consumer goods and services remains within the bank's inflation target of 4 to 6%. The rate hike took effect last week after remaining at the historic low level for just over 2 years. It had been at 0.5% since August 2019. Meanwhile, BOJ says the latest rate hike may not be the last in the near future. This is because they believe there's a risk that inflation may continue to be higher than targeted due to significant increases in commodities and shipping costs. Inflation went above the upper limit of the BOJ's target in August to stand at 6.1%.
Okay, everybody. So that's giving us a little bit of a technical challenge. We have some internet issues. I'm going to try to resolve that right now so that you can see the rest of what's hot in business. Where is it? All right, here we go.
Projection is that the rate will average between 5.5% and 6.5% over the next 2 years. The central bank's next policy decision will be announced on November 16. Proven Investments has completed its acquisition of Heritage Education Funds International. The company first announced the acquisition plans 5 months ago after reaching an agreement with Knowledge First Foundation to purchase its 100% interest in Heritage. Heritage specializes in administering and managing education savings plans (ESPs) for clients in the Bahamas, Bermuda, Jamaica, and the British Virgin Islands. The transaction includes the distribution and management of the Heritage International Scholarship Trust Plan and the member interests of the Heritage International Scholarship Trust Foundation. Proven says the acquisition is a strategic priority for the company. They will be working with Knowledge First over the next year to ensure a seamless transition. Chartered accountant Linval Freeman will take over as chairman of the board of Cygnus Credit Investments come November 1. Freeman is the current chair of the Audit and Governance Committee. He will replace Clement Wayne Iton, who is resigning from SCI's board of directors after 4 years, effective October 31. Under Wayne Iton's stewardship, SCI grew its private credit portfolio from $16 million to $85 million, declared over $6.5 million in dividends to shareholders, and grew net profits to a record $5 million. CEO of Cygnus Capital, Beresford Gray, says the incoming chair has a wealth of experience in accounting and finance and possesses strong regulatory and governance skills. Gray added that Freeman's contribution to the board will be invaluable as SCI continues to expand and seeks to provide customized credit solutions to medium-sized businesses across the region. What's Hot was brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers, your best interest at heart.
Hey, money makers, you're not an official part of the family until you have your merch. Visit KalilahReynolds.com/store to order your t-shirt and your mask today. Let's get this money. This segment of Taking Stock is brought to you by Bulwark Insurance Agency. Insurance made easy. And also brought to you by Appleton Estate. So big up to Appleton, our sponsor, as well as Bulwark Insurance Agency, our two sponsors for this segment. Somebody's asking who is the winner of the giveaway. Yes, our 25K giveaway. We've passed 25,000 subscribers on YouTube. Woohoo! What an accomplishment. And in honor of that, I was giving away 25,000 Jamaican dollars to one lucky winner. And I'm pleased to announce that the winner of that is a young lady named Samoya Cochran. And I'm very happy that it's her because she's one of our day one. She's always watching all the videos, always commenting. So she wasn't a just come comment on videos to win the prize. So congratulations to Samoya. And for everybody else, maybe next time, keep watching, keep liking, keep sharing, and it could be you the next time around. Also remember to subscribe to the newsletter, guys. And this is extremely important now. You see what happened with Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp yesterday. I wouldn't be able to share my content with you if you're not subscribed to the newsletter. Everything goes up on the website, but how do you know when it's there, right? If you have the newsletter, then in the event of an outage like that, let's say one day YouTube shuts down the way Facebook did, then you could still get the content via my newsletter. So make sure that you subscribe at KalilahReynolds.com/newsletter to get all my content directly to your inbox. Damar says, soon you'll reach 1 million followers. Speak it into being, Damar. Thank you so much. Kai says, I wish I saw it earlier. Shaquille saying, congrats to Samoya. Big up to Stocks Unedited, saying this is best stock show in Jamaica, so informative. Thank you so much, Stocks Unedited. And then somebody else was asking if we have a WhatsApp group available for stock enthusiasts. I'm a part of a couple of them, but I guess you have to be invited. I don't moderate any because it's just very time consuming, but I've been thinking of starting perhaps a Facebook group for stocks enthusiasts, a place for people to connect, for us to continue being a community. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. Maybe that's something that we could do. All right, let's get right into this evening's discussion because, as you may have heard, Jamaican Teas is considering a spin-off of its manufacturing business. So that new company could potentially list on the Jamaica Stock Exchange via IPO. So it could be another IPO alert coming soon. Who knows? But of course, the shareholders first have to approve this at an extraordinary general meeting set for the 27th of this month, so October 27. That EGM is going to take place. If you're an existing shareholder of JamTeas, then you get to participate in that vote, in that decision. And then after the 27th, we'll know what's going to be happening with this spin-off. And we also want to talk about another business, QWI Investments, but we'll come to that a little bit later on in the program. First, let me introduce our guest for this evening. He is Chairman of Jamaican Teas and also Chairman of QWI Investments and also the founder, blogger, IC Insider, and many other things, John Jackson. Welcome back to Taking Stock, John.
Thank you very much.
It's so good to have you on. We're coming full circle now after you being the very first guest on this show.
Well, I didn't know I was creating history, but
yeah. Big things, man. Big things.
Well, I just hope for you all the best. Seems like you're going from place to place, from strength to strength. So
thank you.
Continue
Thank you very much. All right. So let's talk JamTeas. So tell me first of all about this consideration to spin off the manufacturing business into a separate company. So how would it be different from the existing JamTeas?
Well, JamTeas or Jamaican Teas owns a number of subsidiaries that are not involved in the production of teas or the various other products that we manufacture. So, it's a significant holder in QWI, which you mentioned. It is involved in real estate, both in terms of ownership of properties as well as developing properties. And we also own a small supermarket in Kingston. So that's a major difference. In the case of what would be called Caribbean Dream Foods Limited, would be involved primarily in the manufacturing aspect of the group, and primarily now involved in the production of teas and a few other household products. So the spin-off would make it virtually a pure manufacturing enterprise. And some investors don't quite like the mixture of various products and services that we are now involved in. I would rather be involved in a pure play, which is the manufacturing arm.
But there are many companies that are integrated in various, or diversified is a better word, that are diversified in various sectors of the economy. So why would this need to be a separate company, or why is that the intention?
Well, the reality is that, we have been approached by one or two persons, businesses who would like to be involved with the group in a significant way, but have expressed reservations or dislike for the conglomerate that we now have, and would rather something that is purely in the tea business, as opposed to the mixture of things that we are involved in currently.
Okay, I see several questions coming in. Can we get that off the screen? Yeah, I see several questions coming in the chat already. Kevin Burke wants to know, what time frame following shareholder approval are you considering for this IPO spinoff of Caribbean Dreams?
Well, we expect shortly after the approval that the spinoff will in fact take place. As far as issuing shares to the public is concerned, that is a decision that has not yet been made. My own view is that it would probably be a 2022 endeavor, probably early, maybe in the first quarter or thereabout in 2022.
And what are you expecting may happen on October 27? Have you tested the temperature of investors? Does it seem likely that this could be the direction that you're going?
Well, I see no reason to believe that there'll be any other decision than to approve the spin-off. You can see the reaction of the market in the shares already, where investors have actually been buying the stock in increasing numbers and at increased prices. So I believe that's a subtle message that they like what is to come.
I saw last week the stock price for Jamaican Teas was up about 20%. I think it was 19 point something percent. I'm not sure what it's been like so far this week, but you're right. Shareholders have been, it seems, very excited by this news.
Well, to date, the stock traded as high as $4.65 or 67 cents. And I think it closed around about $4.50. So with 1 point, it was again the leading trade on the junior market today, with over 1 million, nearly 2 million shares traded. So the interest is there. And I think the interest is there for a number of reasons. I believe we have done pretty well as a company this year, and the stock price has more than doubled since the start of this year, and it's probably has tripled since we actually had the stock split. So I get the impression that investors like what we have done. They like the feeling that we are sensitive to investors' desires, and it shows in the increased number of shareholders I think we have had. I think the numbers have gone up significantly since we have had the stock split. We were at some like 2,500 shareholders a year or so ago. My suspicion is probably closer to 4,000. I don't have the figures, but based on the level of trading that we have seen, and I've never seen that level of trading in Jamaican Tea shares since we have been listed. And it's just been phenomenal, very encouraging for us.
Wow. Well, perhaps some shareholders are anticipating what Kirk Douglas is saying. He said, do it like lumber, give us free shares. Thanks.
Well, we'll see what happens. And, with time, I'm sure we'll make the right decisions.
Kirk has another question. Why are
One of the
directors
things that we have to, sorry, one of
continuously
the things that we,
selling? Go ahead first, and then we come to the other question.
yeah, one of the things that we have to bear in mind is that the decision to sell, part of the decision is that it will provide for us inflows of cash, so we can use those funds for further development or acquisitions of entities that may become available for acquisition purposes for the group. So it unlike Lumber Depot, where they could give a one-for-one swap, that's very unlikely to happen in the case of Jamaican Teas and the spin-off.
But I'm sure there would be some type of incentive for existing shareholders. Usually there's at least a discount, right?
Well, discussions have been taking place, and I'm sure, we have the AGM and the EGM. I'm sure the investors will send a pretty clear message to the directors as to what it is that they think is befitting. And I don't think the directors will be oblivious to the feedback that comes from the shareholders.
So you heard it, viewers and listeners. If you are an existing shareholder, you definitely want to participate in those upcoming general meetings. The EGM is on the 27th. And have you set a new date for the AGM yet?
Both AGM will go before the EGM.
Okay.
It's the same.
So what's the date for that?
Same day.
Oh, it's the same day, the same event. Okay.
That's correct.
All right. So
one
Kirk
will
wanted to
just
know,
happen before the next.
why are directors continuously selling?
Well, I don't know that directors are continuously selling. Some directors, there's one director who's going to retire. He's securing his resources for retirement. So that's one reason. In another case, one director, the shares, since that director or the company has acquired shares, they haven't been selling shares in the market at all. They have accumulated shares over the period of time, and a decision was taken to reduce the exposure in the portfolio because that stock has become a significant holding for that portfolio, and it's a rebalancing exercise that is taking place. Today, I think you'd have seen an announcement that a connected party sold something like 6 million shares. QWI acquired a significant amount of shares in Jamaican Teas. It has done exceptionally well for QWI. I think it has probably doubled or more than doubled. And the decision is taken to lighten up on it and take some profits.
I hope that answers your question there, Kirk. Another question that I see
There's nothing to
asking,
suggest. There's nothing to suggest that the future is bleak. That's not the scenario.
No, I don't think so at all. Although we do have some significant challenges in the manufacturing sector right now with the shipping prices issue. Has that affected JamTeas?
It has affected us, but there are ways of dealing with it. But we had a good year as far as the information that's available, and we look forward to the coming year, and I believe we should go on to increase sales and hopefully profits will follow. I've had a very strong review about the company from I joined it as a director. And I had strong faith that it was going to deliver significant profits for shareholders, and it has done that. I believe that the future is going to be bright for the group, both from the investments standpoint, the real estate side, as well as the manufacturing arm. I mean, we are talking about currently we've had to move out our soup divisions from Bell Road because there's growing demand for those products or the products that segment produces, as well as increased demand for our tea products. So it allows for us to create more space for the tea products until we can actually expand the factory, which we had actually spoken about already. So things continue to move positively. We constantly add products to our range from time to time, and it's a pretty exciting enterprise.
I love your mint tea. I'm not even much of a tea drinker, but I will have Caribbean Dreams mint
Great.
tea. So another question I see a few people asking here, Georgette says, if I'm a shareholder of JamTeas, how would the spinoff affect my stock?
I don't think it's going to affect the stock because the plan is that JamTeas will own about 75% of the spin-off company. And what is going to happen is that that subsidiary is going to have its own general manager, and that general manager is joining us, I believe, at the 1st of November. So that person is going to be solely responsible for that endeavor, and that person has quite a bit of experience in areas that we are involved in, and should be able to drive and get much more out of the operations, I believe, than might have happened in the past. At least they will be solely focused on that endeavor, and hopefully should deliver a greater punch going forward.
Okay, so we should look out for that announcement coming up in the next few weeks.
I would, yes, some announcement will be made, has to be made.
Okay. Philip wants to know if there are any plans to migrate to the main market.
That has been discussed already, and that I believe is going to happen at some point in time down the road. It's probably not going to happen in the immediate 12-month period, but it's fluid, and it all depends on what happens in terms of expansion and acquisitions, if there are any acquisitions.
Also asking about a possible rights issue, I suppose, if you were to migrate to the main market. Is JamTeas looking to raise capital for itself as opposed to this potential new business?
Well, the new business doesn't require a lot of capital because it's going to operate within the Bell Road plant, and that Bell Road plant is expected to continue to be owned by Jamaican Teas. As you would have seen in the notice for the extraordinary general meeting, the inventory, the machinery, and those things are going to be passed over to the company. And I think initially what will apply is shares will be given or debt owed to Jamaican Teas. So there would be the plan is that there will be very little funds needed for the manufacturing arm, and whatever funds it would need, Jamaican Teas would provide it up front. So it should be well funded, adequately funded. So when the shares are sold, it's likely to be Jamaican Teas selling shares.
Okay. Well, we'll have plenty of time to talk a lot more about this if and when that time comes. I definitely have you all back on to discuss the IPO if and when that time comes. And I'm anticipating, and so are you, that this is likely to happen.
It's
But we
going to
do want to
happen,
ask
yes.
you about another company that you chair, and that's QWI Investments. You've had a pretty good quarter. Let me see what it says here. Profit before tax almost doubled in the third quarter ending June 2021 versus the corresponding quarter in 2020. Well, nobody did well in 2020, did you? So you got to $214 million in profit before tax for the third quarter ended June. So tell me how you were able to turn things around.
Well, first of all, the latest net asset value is $1.34 per share, and that equates to about just over $500 million in profit for the year. We have beaten again the Jamaica Stock Exchange indices. The composite index is up something like 9 or 10% since last year, September, and we are up 20% over the same period. We have essentially focused, certainly locally, we have focused on companies that we believe, and we have done our research tells us, will actually produce outstanding results. We have maybe belatedly, but something like RGR is something that a lot of people were skeptical about. We have it in our portfolio. It has since last year, it has more than doubled for us.
It did phenomenally in August.
Yeah, we bought Jamaican Teas at a fairly early stage. We have things like Caribbean Cream. So we have cement. We have had cement. Cement, I think, has just about doubled. Grace has gone up 50-odd%. So we have looked at stocks. There's research going on constantly on the various listed companies. And when we identified the stock that people thought was a no-go, Caribbean producers, few people saw the sort of turnaround that one anticipate was going to happen. That stock is in the portfolio, and that stock, I think, has just about doubled since the start, more than doubled since the start of this year, and I think since last year, September. So we have had some outstanding candidates in the portfolio. Some of them have not done as well as others, but those that have done outstandingly well for us have paid off immensely. And then we have the overseas market that has continued to do pretty well for us. So it's a combination of the astute selection of stocks, and there are very few top stocks in the market that's not in the portfolio this year.
So what's your margins on the overseas investments? You said it was 20 something, I think you said, for the Jamaican market. On the overseas investments, it would be what, the return?
I know the overall portfolio has gone up, I think, around 25%, 30% since last year, September. It's a combination.
So I see where the net asset value of QWI for the end of September is $1.33. Is that end of September or end of June?
Yeah, I think
Increase
that
yes.
is the end of September.
End of September, indeed.
Yes.
But the stock price, for some reason, has failed to keep up with that net asset value, John. Why do you think that is? Ever since your IPO, it's lagged behind, even pre-pandemic.
Yeah, well, I believe there are a number of factors. At one stage, there was a discount to net asset value of about 15 to 18%. I believe that when we went to market, many persons felt that the stock was similar to most IPOs and that it would escalate in price. When that didn't happen, some people got disappointed and sold off. More recently, there was a big block of shares. There was something like 30 odd million units of shares that was put on the market for everybody to see, and that just placed a lid on the stock price. That has now been lifted, and the stock price have moved from 80 odd cents, 81 cents a week or so ago to 90 odd cents today. And I expect it to continue over time to move up.
But it's
Unless
still
someone,
significantly behind the IPO price, which was
well,
135 for
yeah,
the general
but
public.
that's true. But the thing about stocks and investment is that things don't go in a straight line, and and people have to recognize that investment is not always something for the short run. Sometimes it pays off very shortly. Sometimes you have to wait for the payoff. It's turning out that this one is one in which it's going to take a little longer time for the payoff to take place, but that will eventually happen. I think when people recognize that QWI rather has some unique qualities. One of those qualities is the fact that it has an overseas investment portfolio. So there is a hedge against devaluation, etc. And that the Jamaican market continues to deliver well for us based on our stock selection. That there are some people who will see it as a gem to own rather than one to scorn. And it's just a matter of time that one has to wait to see a resurgence in the stock price.
Well, a few people in the comments asking about dividends for QWI. Will you pay one anytime soon? Asked Daniel.
Well, I can't answer the question definitively about anytime soon, but that is a factor that we will look at, and we'll see what will happen. So yes, there's the possibility that we could be paying a dividend, but it's not something the directors have discussed or agreed to at this stage.
Kai wants to know any thoughts to share buybacks with respect to existing QWI shares.
Well, at the moment, QWI is not in a position to buy back shares. We are putting a resolution to shareholders to facilitate that process. But Jamaican Teas, who happens to be the majority shareholders, they will from time to time look at the possibility of buying shares. So it may not be QWI, it may be Jamaican Teas, or when the resolution is passed and we are in a position so to do, then we may from time to time buy back shares or sell shares to the market, as the case might be. But that is not QWI as it stands is not in a position to buy back the shares, but Jamaica Teas can buy shares in the market and have bought shares in the market and probably will buy shares in the market sooner than later.
I'll take one final question from our viewers, and this one comes from Philip. What is QWI's policy regarding raising additional funds on the market? Given the current prospects on the JSE for the emergence from the pandemic, is it not a good time to raise?
Well, my own personal view is that I wouldn't want to go to the market to raise additional funds until we can get the net asset value beyond where we were when we went public, and to ensure that the stock price returns to some level of
that makes sense.
What I see as normal. In other words, we have to build credibility in the market,
right?
So people recognize that we are not jokers, and they have sufficient faith that we can deliver what we plan to deliver. So the answer to the question is, I would say yes. Timing is not right for it.
Not for QWI anyway.
Not for QWI.
Right. And finally, when is the AGM for QWI?
The AGM is going to be after Jamaican Teas AGM.
So possibly in November?
I am not sure that will be the time. I mean,
okay. So you don't have a date yet.
I've had discussions to see to what extent we can incorporate the 2021 AGM and the 2020 AGM together, which would be more cost effective than to have two separate ones. So we are going to try and get the QWI annual report done as quickly as we probably can, so that we have that. We may have that option and just make one thing of it. But nothing is yet cast in stone as far as that is concerned.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, John. I appreciate your presence and your upfrontness. Of course, we'll chat again sometime in the future, probably soon.
Thanks for having me, and wish you all the best, and have a great program.
Before you go, how could I forget? I have a gift for you from Appleton. I have a lovely gift basket right here. We shall be sending it to your office tomorrow. And this is the 8-year reserve from Appleton. So enjoy that from the Appleton team.
Can I steal 1 minute of your time, though? Because
sure.
I know you're speaking about the increased interest rates by Bank of Jamaica.
Yes.
And there are various views about it. I've had a strong view that the rate should never have been reduced to 0.5% for the overnight rate. The only persons who benefited from that adjustment primarily were that of the government, because their interest costs fell. The other point is that if the society wants an independent central bank, we have to make up our minds. We either have an independent central bank or we don't have one. And I believe, frankly, that the move upward, I think it's the 1% is ill-advised from the standpoint that the central bank should have been on the ball all along to make gradual adjustments. A 1% adjustment tells me that somebody slipped up badly in the past, and you shouldn't have had a need for a 1% jump all of a sudden.
So you're saying it's too much all at once. It should have been a 0.5, or it should have started from before.
It should have started from before, because nothing has actually changed.
The inflation target was only recently breached, though.
Yeah, but one of the things that we have to do as in investment, I have to try and forecast what is going to happen on the road. We want a central bank that is going to be on the ball and put all the things, take all these factors into consideration. I look at them. They know. They're the ones telling us from time to time that inflation is going to go up before it's supposed to go up. So they should have those things already in the system to facilitate knowing when they should move, and when things get close to the edge of their top line, that is what they want. Then you make adjustments early enough. One of the critical things that has happened in this country, and people don't want to say it, is that the exchange rate is the major driver of inflation. So when the exchange rate moves from something like
people say it all the time, John. The BOJ doesn't want to say it.
Well, the recent adjustment inflation, you check the inflation rate over the last 3 or so years. Each time it spikes, it is primarily because the exchange rate has moved. And the exchange rate moved from, I think in June, from under 150 to 155, and many people are pricing the goods at 175 to 1. So the bulk of that inflation is caused by exchange rate movement.
But now the exchange rate is coming down and inflation is going up.
Well, there are different factors, but the inflation rate will come down because the exchange rate has moderated downwards. So the next, maybe not September, or quite likely September, October, you'll see inflation falling because the exchange rate has appreciated.
Boy, you start up a whole lot of conversation when I was about to wrap, but great points, and it's something that we should ask the Bank of Jamaica about. So perhaps we can have them on another episode of the show. Thanks again for joining me, John.
You're welcome, and have a great night.
You too. Thanks. You too. So Philip says, talk the things, JJ. Lots of people commenting on that particular issue. And we're going to have the analysts coming up shortly. I want to remind you as well to take our poll this week, our YouTube poll. And our poll is all about the Facebook outage. Yesterday, was it? Today Tuesday, right? Yeah, yesterday from 10 o'clock to about 6 p.m. How did the Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp outage affect you? Did you even notice? I definitely noticed like immediately because my WhatsApp messages weren't going through. And then we have stuff for business that needs to go up on Instagram and it wasn't posting. But how did it affect you? Did it affect you personally? Did it affect your business? Let's know in the comments and also take our poll this week. Up next, we've got the analysts. They are going to be talking to us about quite a number of things, including the Dow Jones in the United States. It's been a bloody time for them. We're looking at that issue of the BOJ's interest rate hike, and we're also looking at Express Catering. So stay with us. Up next is your market recap. Taking Stock was brought to you by Bulwark Insurance Agency. Insurance made easy.
Time now for your market recap. Brought to you by Sagicor Investments. Think wealth, think Sagicor Investments. It was a great week on the Jamaica Stock Exchange, with the combined index gaining nearly 3% or 11,000 points. 110 stocks traded across both the main and junior markets of the JSE for the week ending Friday, October 1, 2021. 67 advanced, 37 declined, and 6 stayed the same. Nearly 156 million shares changed hands on the Jamaican dollar market, totaling an astounding $5.9 billion. Fresh on the heels of its APO, Barita Investments saw the most trading activity. It took up nearly 27% of market volume. People bought and sold 41 million shares in the company. The stock traded at an all-time high of $108.08 last Thursday, September 30. However, it closed the week on Friday at $104.14. Pulse Investments traded the second highest volume. People bought and sold nearly 15 million shares in the company. The stock gained 4 cents to open this new week at $4.98. Pulse was also last month's second biggest gainer, up nearly 29%. The stock ended September at $4.91. And Jamaican Teas rounded out the most traded, taking up 7% of market volume. The stock gained 67 cents to open this week at $4.22. That's a 19% gain since they announced that shareholders are to consider a spin-off manufacturing company. Now let's see who had the biggest gains for the week. Portland JSX stock price rose 28% to close last week at $9. Main Event Entertainment Group stock price rose 23% to close last week at $4.59. And rounding out our biggest gains, Margaritaville Turks USD up 22% to open this week at 11 cents US. On the losing side now, Epley 7.5% preference shares due 2024 was the biggest loser for the week, down 25%. The stock closed last week at $6. No surprise here. Epley 7.5% was also the biggest loser for the month of September, down nearly 45%. The stock closed last month at $6.80. Epley's ordinary shares were second on the list. Its stock price fell nearly 15% last week. The stock opens this new week at $32.52. Rounding off the week's biggest losers, AMG Packaging and Paper Company, which lost 12% to close last week at $1.74. Now here's a look at some of the highlights for the month of September. The main index declined nearly 1%, and the junior market declined by less than 1%. But on the bright side, financial stocks advanced a little, and the manufacturing and distribution index declined by 2%. And here are the other companies with the biggest gains in September. ISP Finance Services stock price gained 35% to close last month at $23.50. And rounding off the biggest gains for September, 138 Student Living Jamaica Variable Preference stock advanced 24% to close last month at $7.45. Palace Amusement was September's second biggest loser after Epley Preference shares. Palace was down 30% to close the month at $788.47. And Access Financial Services rounds are the biggest losers for September, down 17%. Market Recap was brought to you by Sagicor Investments. Think wealth, think Sagicor Investments. This segment of Taking Stock, The Analysts, is brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers.
All right, saying welcome back. It's time for the analysts, and we have to apologize for that issue with the the thing sticking just now. Yeah, we're having some technical issues, some internet issues. Dry weather internet Jamaica have. It's been raining today, and maybe that caused things to slow down. I'm not sure why it was playing so slow, but we have to work with it. So you saw your top stocks of the week and also the month of September, hoping that you saw your favorite stock and the ones that you have shares in listed there among the top advancers. You made some good money in September. Let's move on to the analysts now. Who are the people on our panel for this week? Well, we're joined by equity trader at JMMB Group, Clive Charlton, business writer at the Jamaica Observer, David Rose, and financial coach, founder, and CEO of Profit Jumpstarter, Keisha Bailey. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Boy, Keisha, you have a fancy lens. There's a fisheye lens.
Yeah,
curve.
yeah.
It's nice though.
Thank you.
It's nice. Clive, you still at the office?
Yes, I am, but I live quite nearby, so I have a good excuse.
Okay. All right, cool. Because I know that background looks familiar. I'm like, wait a minute.
I can run.
Office?
Yeah, I can run home.
Okay. All right, so let's talk. We have a lot of things to get through, so we're definitely running overtime this evening. But John jumped in with a really great point at the end there about the BOJ, which was one of the things that we wanted to talk about today as well. So might as well just start there since John set the ball rolling on that topic. So the BOJ, what they did was they raised their policy lending rate from 0.5% to 1.5%. And for those who aren't really familiar with what the BOJ's policy lending rate is, it's what they lend money to commercial banks in Jamaica. That's the rate, the interest rate that they set to them. And it basically is a signal to commercial banks as to what they should be doing with their interest rates. So when the BOJ lowers their interest rates, it tends to follow. It's not immediate, but a few months later, you'll see the commercial banks start lowering their interest rates as well. And when the BOJ raises their interest rates, you'll see the banks follow suit and raise their interest rates. So BOJ is now raising interest rates as a measure to contain inflation. And you heard what John had to say about that. But first, Keisha, you wanted to address this topic specifically. Why?
I do agree with what John was saying as well, because in essence, the BOJ has tripled its policy rates, going from 0.5% to 1.5%. It is a very drastic move. And typically, we don't see such drastic interest rate increases being made. Something seems amiss to me as well, because usually what you have are more gradual increases in interest rates, such that the economy and the markets can absorb that gradual increase. Giving a 1% jump is fairly aggressive. The nature also of using that policy rate to combat inflation. Inflation just now is above the BOJ target. It's at 6.1% as of August, point-to-point inflation. Jumping 1% just in time when you're out of that 6%, it's fairly drastic. Inflation expectations also are within that 7% range, and it's largely driven by what we've seen in the exchange rate movement in the last couple of months. As also you've noted, the exchange rate has abated, It's no longer north of 150, it's below 150 now. And with that, we're gonna see it filter through to the inflation numbers going forward. To do such a large increase, it's fairly aggressive. I'm waiting to see the impact that it will play out on the economy. But it seems to me, as John said, that something was off prior, and so this increase may be a catch-up measure.
Could it also have the impact of, while it may contain inflation, it may also affect our growth levels, and we're seeking growth right now, is still in a pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the whole thinking is that we need to contract prices, but will it contract demand? That's what we're waiting to see. Is this increase going to affect consumers such that nobody wants to spend? Because we need the demand to keep the growth wheel turning in the economy.
I'd like to hear Clive and David's thoughts on this. Clive, what do you think about this move by the BOJ?
Well, yeah, my assumption is the BOJ, they have various tools. One, they have, I suspect, strongly experienced, competent persons and all the numbers to look at. But, with all of that said, I must agree with John. 100 basis point movement at one go is, it's a little bit heavy for the market, and there is going to be perhaps, it's important to have financial stability in the marketplace. So a gradual movement upward will give institutions, especially financial institutions, time to adjust. And as that filters through to the rest of the asset market, which is in terms of the bond market, the equity market, etc., there are gradual adjustment that kind of keep the market relatively stable, you see. So we're yet to see, we're facing a new paradigm. It's the first time in probably 30 plus years where I've had interest rates so low in the Jamaican economy, and we have seen the positive effect of that, a significant increase in business upturn. So I want to see now what this is going to do on the supply side, on the real productive side, on the financial side, and also on consumer demand. But 1%, 100 basis point jump movement in one go, that can be considered significant. It is significant. From 0.5% to 1.5% at the base rate, that is significant.
I see David smirking. What's on your mind, David?
No, I wasn't just smirking, but the thing is, the BOJ, it's not that the entire silo all at once kind of says that they're seeing something that we're probably not seeing at the same time.
Right, yeah.
I just probably making persons very concerned because, as Clive said, that level of jump is not something that you would have expected from a central bank, because although you want to curb inflation or try and use your monetary tools to try and contain inflation, from what perspective you are able to do, you should do gradually. So when the policy was declining in 2019, I think it was around 4 or 5%, coming down to 0.5%. It was stepwise. So it increased in May, then it decreased in July, increased up to August to 0.5. So it was steadily coming down. And the thing is, that creates more opportunity for there to be a monetary expansion in the economy in the case of lending loans and so on. So let me break this down for persons to understand. So think about it. The banks have to keep a particular amount of money at the central bank, right? It's part of their regulations and requirements. When the central bank increases the policy rate, what it basically does is that the banks are incentivized to, lend less, because the central bank basically increases interest rate on the money that is held already. It's basically risk-free. So unless the persons in the market or persons who are willing to borrow are going to pay more interest rates and costs, then it ends up causing lower lending in the overall market. And the thing is, for persons who have variable rate loans, that's going to be a significant hit to them, because, for example, several companies on the JSC, JMB Group, CAC 2000, and CWJ, they have variable rate preference shares. So they have a fixed rate that is within the calculation, and the variable rate portion comes from the BOJ's weighted average treasury bill yield. And what usually happened in the past, as evidenced by data, is that as the policy rate came down, the treasury bill yield came down at the same pace. So basically, with the treasury bill rate, with the policy rate going back up now, what you're probably going to see is that the treasury bill yield might in turn actually see an increase as well. So, that's going to cause extra costs for companies, basically. But firms like Epley Limited, which is a preference share issue and got fixed interest rates on their preference shares, they're basically not seeing any significant impact in essence because the benefit in fixed interest rate costs right now with interest rates going up is that you aren't even hit by these interest rate increases. For it might cost more or less in the future to borrow, but in the current period, you're not seeing more of your P&L, profit and loss, going towards interest costs. So it is a very drastic move, and it's the central bank or the Federal Reserve in the US has said, they're trying to taper in their asset buyback program and so on. China is showing that different central banks around the world are expecting some level of inflation that is not looking good.
And see, Garvin making a point here, saying, I think interest rates for the banks didn't fall as low as the BOJ expected over the years. We may not see the banks increase their rates anytime soon unless the policy rate gets to 3% or so. Garvin, you are very optimistic because we know that when it's time to raise the rates, they do not hesitate.
Yeah.
I think
when it's
he's
time to
speaking
raise
to the
it, goes
monetary.
up. But when it comes time to lower, that's hesitation
very
is
sticky.
real. But you're
he's
right. The interest rates have not fallen as we had expected based on the BOJ's policy rates over the past 2 years or so. I had expected to see interest rates in the range of about 5% and even maybe a little bit lower, 4.5%, 5%, 6%. But that has not happened, even with the policy rate at 0.5%. So I don't think that even that policy rate had been having the desired impact. Yes, the rates have come down because I always remember Audley Shaw saying, we want to get to the days of single digit interest rates. And that's because interest rates were well above 10% were the norm. And now we're looking at 7-8% on car loans and mortgages, 9%, maybe 10% at some places. But it should be, I think, lower based on where the BOJ has set its rate over the past couple of years. So that's one thing to consider. We still have a couple of other topics that we want to look at. Let's see, what should we do next? Let's do JamTeas, since we just came off that conversation with John Jackson. So David, as we know, Jamaican Teas is considering this spinoff. We already have the background, but do you think this is a good idea?
It's a good idea in the context of what they're looking to achieve. So, John just mentioned that, a partner is looking to partner with them, and there's this equity stake consideration coming into the fray. So it isn't a bad thing because the company is still going to maintain controlling interest in the manufacturing business, and will still, based on how they structure it, some level of monetary significance as well. So I don't think it's a bad thing. And the thing is that I'm waiting to see how they're going to structure any potential IPO or any whatever capital raise they try to do, because it will kind of tell us in a sense, what Jamaica Teas is potentially looking to do in another direction. Because remember, John mentioned acquisitions as well. And you have to remember that you said expansion and so on. And the company spin off its manufacturing subsidiary isn't a bad thing, because it does create opportunity for them to actually raise additional capital later in the future. The manufacturing business as its own standalone segment. So for context, in 2020, the manufacturing business saw, I think it was 30% increase in revenue, 30% increase in revenues to $1.4 billion, talking about the company itself, and its profit went up by 81% to $258 million. For the consolidated group of Jamaica Teas, the net profit attributable to owners went down by 43% to $222 million, and that was largely driven by QWI. So I can't understand the context that he's presenting in essence of, someone wanting a manufacturing play, because there are other companies which have done APOs or in this case, additional capital raises to allow new investors to come in, because they would have wanted a particular stake to enter a particular business segment. So I think it's a good deal once shareholders are seeing some maximum returns to a bigger portfolio, because when you buy this IPO, you had a bigger portfolio to invest with. So this potential spin-off of the manufacturing business could mean more capital to grow the business, which isn't a bad thing.
All right, let's take a look now at Express Catering. So they're reporting their biggest quarterly increase since the start of the year. Clive, what is that telling you?
Well,
That's
it's
good
still
news.
it is good news. What it tells me is, well, let's look at in context. Express Catering, what is it? They really offer various type of. It's what do they describe themselves as a restaurant and branded product concessionaire, and their business is located within the airport, largely Sangster International Airport. Now look at this. You have a regular business. Let's say one of those street side business, Starbucks, Wendy's, you name it, on the street, and there's a pandemic. There's a slowdown of business of movement. So yes, walking customers will be restricted. That's what they're relying on. People walking by the shop or stopping by, right? And also, no, but they can adjust. Why? The lockdown is for a certain number of days, for a certain number of hours. So people are free to walk about at some point in time. So those street side business can do their thing. In addition to that, the government roll out this program, this delivery program that assists street side business. But just think of Express Catering, whose business activity is strictly located in an airport, and there's a lockdown. You know, you're moving from about nearly 2-point-something million visitors per annum. I'm not sure the percentage that passes through Sangster, but I'm sure in excess of 80% pass through Sangster International to zero. So you can see the impact that it would have had on their business activity. So that was a significant hit on them, where revenue fell from like in excess of 3 points, from nearly $4 million to up to May 344,000 US. You see, well, that took some steps, really good steps. Let me look at some of the steps that they took. Of course, you know, the first step is they said that a deferral of, well, a decline of revenue for financial year 2020. The steps they took, a deferral of planned non-essential capital expenditure, right? Negotiated extended credit terms, right? Of course, they laid off staff members and they cut costs where they could. So they took some good steps to contain cost, right? And I'm sure that they renegotiated and shifted, improved efficiency along the way. Well, from last May, which is, well, 2021 May to February, to now August, the first quarter, they have made a tremendous jump in revenue because of the ease in restriction on traveling. And that has worked out quite well for them. Moving revenue from about 344,000 to probably about 3.6. As that three, let me get that figure. Well, the revenue has moved tremendously, and they have shown some recovery here, right, from 3.6 million US dollars for the quarter ended, okay, compared to 444 million the prior quarter last year, August 2020. So we've seen some significant recovery for Express Catering.
Well, I'm happy to hear that things are looking up for them. And as you rightly said, as tourism looks up and travel looks up, then things are going to look up for Express Catering. We can't end the show without talking about what's going on the U.S. markets. Keisha, I know you are very keen on what's going on over there. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 500 points on the last day of September. And the S&P 500 also had its worst month since March 2020. What's going on over there?
Yeah, so of note then, in the US, we've had a bad month in September, and we're comparing it to the start of the pandemic, March 2020. What's been happening is that on the US side, the Federal Reserve is thinking of pulling back the amount of stimulus. So a lot of persons were getting checks previously and dumping all that money in the stock market. The Fed is pulling back on stimulus. They've also signaled that they're going to be slowing down their asset purchase program. And so that has caused some jitters in the market. Also, interest rates slowly are increasing in the US as well. The Fed has not increased its policy rate, but market interest rates are going higher. And that tends to hurt technology companies, which are the biggest part of the US market. So because of that, we've had a lot of fall off in stock prices in the US. It's been a bloody month, as everyone has been saying. But the key thing to note here, if we step back, September has historically been a negative month in the US stock market for the entire history of time. It always has been, and this month was no different. So we step back, we look on the broader, the bigger picture behind it all, the economy is still healthy. Yes, there are near-term concerns around inflation, shipping bottlenecks, energy prices, and so forth, but still strong economy, still resilient. It may even present buying opportunities for some of these tech companies that we all love.
Mm. That's a good point. I wish John was still on. We could ask him. He is still
Yes.
on. He's backstage. John, if you'd like to jump in here, I don't mind asking you. What's going on? So that's what you get for not leaving the studio. So QWI is invested in U.S. stocks. Keisha was just talking about the bloody month in September. What are your anticipations regarding the U.S. markets?
Mhm.
Uh, it's a little unsettling currently. Of course, the big concern is with interest rates and what is going to happen there. The market rates are rising, although the Fed hasn't yet adjusted rates. In fact, similar thing happened in Jamaica over the last month, where the rates on CDs went up to 2.56%, engineered by Bank of Jamaica, of course. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and what it suggests is that people need to be a little bit defensive in investing, so that if you are not correct, you're not overly exposed in the market. And one has to be in the right segments, because certain segments are hip at certain times, others are not, and there's a rotation that goes on between segments from time to time. So I just believe it calls for some amount of caution in going forward. And the same thing is going to apply in the Jamaican market as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks for jumping in, John. I know I put you on the spot just now.
That's okay. I've been listening, and if I might steal again a point, I was just sending you a WhatsApp to just say the reason why interest rate could not come down in Jamaica the way people would have wanted to see it on loans, is because the banks lend only about 50% of the deposit funds that they have. In other countries, like in Trinidad, where they have lent 80 or more percent, you can bring interest rates down low on loans. But that's not the case in Jamaica, because the banks need to make some amount of profit, and loans are the most profitable side of the bank's business, or at least it makes the bulk of the income. So if they can't lend because of restrictions that they have had in the past, more than 50 or 60% of their funds, because they have lent government money at subsidized rates, then the borrowers have to pay the cost, and that is essentially what has happened in Jamaica.
I can add one
Thanks
point
for
on
those
that, John.
insights, John. Go ahead, David.
When I did my research last year and I checked it out, NCB's loans to deposits ratio is over 91%. And that's going from around 2013, when it was around 70%. So in that case, they are one entity that actually lending more with respect to loans to deposits. But I do agree with
And
that.
is that typical across the sector, or is that just NCB?
I'm not sure.
Did you get a chance to look at others?
You have to be careful.
I looked at the data across the sector for each bank. The data I was able to actually access for the bank, not the financial groups. And what I did find was that a lot of the banks were more conservative in recent years. So John is right saying that the sector itself has been conservative. So I look at other banks carrying data specifically right now. Other banks were probably like at 60% loans to deposits, some at 70%. Most are passing 80. So you do have a level of conservatism by the banks, which has basically done good for the risk conservative ones who want to manage risk, but at the same time has basically impacted persons' borrowing ability and getting low interest rates.
The one thing I say, David, is that one has to be careful when analyzing the banks, because what has happened in recent times is that people have used repo. So where people have had fixed deposits in the past at banks, they've gone the route of repos. And you have to take, in my view, when you're doing that exercise, you have to take the pool of repos that they have with the loans to get a correct assessment of how much funds that they have on deposit, which really is the so-called public deposit plus repos that the investors put there because they're getting a better rate of interest on the repos that they have.
Just explain quickly what repos are.
Repos are
repurchase
instruments
agreements.
that it's a contract where the banks agree to buy back an instrument from the individual or vice versa. So you take out you provide some funds and one party agrees to buy it back when it matures. So when you look at the overall funding in the system, loans as a percentage of the total funds that would be available is negligible, relatively speaking. And repos are repos because government's demand for funds from the system has been so great in the past, still is great when it's normalized to maybe 40, 50%. A lot of those funds that are repos are going to end up in the banking system as deposits. But you have to get to the stage where the banks are lending 70, 80% of the available funds in the system to get those loan rates down to where they ought to be.
Excellent point. Thank you so much, John, David, Keisha, Clive. Great discussion today. Great show.
Thank you very much for having us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right. Stick with us, viewers and listeners. Just have a little recap coming up next. And to remind you that segment of Taking Stock, the Analysts, was brought to you by Jamaica Money Market Brokers. That's JMMB. Want to remind you as well to subscribe to the newsletter. I cannot stress this enough. Some of you are reluctant for some reason. It's easy to get people to follow me on social media, but the subscribe to the newsletter thing has not been growing as fast as I would like. Yes, we have had a lot of new email subscribers and I appreciate it. But things like what happened yesterday with that Facebook outage, Instagram outage, WhatsApp outage. Suppose you can't get your financial information on any of these platforms, on YouTube, Facebook, go down again. You may need to make sure that you're subscribed to the newsletter at KalilahReynolds.com/newsletter. Big up again to Samoya Cochrane, our contest winner, our 25K contest winner. Keep telling everybody to subscribe, to like, to share, and let's keep this platform growing. Something else that I wanted to say just now. What was it? Yes, King Leng, a loaded episode this was. We did touch on quite a number of things. Ingrid says, very informative program. Very interesting and informative program. Kalilah, thank you so much. Ingrid, Randy says, subscribed. Thank you for subscribing. So we have a lot to talk about. Make sure that you tune into the other programs this week on Money Mondays, JA. We're talking about the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. So it actually is the largest stock exchange in the English-speaking Caribbean. Yep, bigger than Jamaica in terms of market capitalization. So check that episode out. Tomorrow on Money Moves, JA, the show for the entrepreneurs out there, we're talking sales. How do you improve your sales in a pandemic? And also coming up very soon is episode 6 in our special series with Pulse Investments. This one is my favorite episode so far. So we're looking at succession planning within Pulse, Kingsley Cooper passing the torch. And he also told me a really interesting story about when he just got started in events planning and they brought the Commodores to Jamaica. And then at the very last minute, Lionel Richie's sick. Can you imagine the star of the show gets sick after thousands of people have bought tickets to your show? What did they do? Find out coming up soon on episode 6 of our special series with pulse. A few of you have taken our poll on YouTube so far. Let me tell you what the early results are. I asked, to what extent did the Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp outage affect your business and or personal life? 46% said, what outage? I didn't even notice. Really? 46% of you, and that was the most popular answer. 42% said a little bit, but I found other ways to get around it. And 6% said a lot. I could barely function. For me, it was a little. It was a lot at the beginning, but then afterwards you kind of figured things out. I ended up spending a whole lot of time on the phone that I normally would just sending messages, like just a simple message to say I sent the file, or did you get something? I end up having to waste time calling people that ordinarily would take just a few seconds on WhatsApp. So it did affect me quite a bit. So thank you all, everybody, for tuning in. A few people asking about heritage funds. Not sure why, because yes, heritage funds are already available in Jamaica. Proven Investments just bought that entire portfolio. So if you can be a little bit more specific what you want to know about heritage, maybe we can get some clarity for you. Thank you for your participation this evening. Thanks for all the comments, all the questions. Love having you guys on Taking Stock Live. I like doing this live format. Thank you so much. I'm Kalilah Reynolds. Until next time, and of course, let's get this money.